Okay? Is that okay? This is for Torah anytime. So. The role of social networking in our lives, in being able to be productive, and maybe even in making friends and friendship. Now, I'm sort of a strange person to be delivering this talk, and I'll explain to you why. Some of you may know. I own a social network. I actually own the largest Jewish social network in the world called Shabbat.com. And I started Shabbat.com a few years ago. And today, 1 million people have found Shabbos through my website and Shidduchim and so on and so forth. So you would expect me to be maybe the very first person to give a thumbs up to the concept of social network. Like, yes, what an amazing way for people to interact with each other, to get to know each other. So the first thing I want to tell you is that social networking was not invented by Mark Zuckerberg. And it wasn't even invented by the people who he plagiarized it from. Right? Social networking actually goes all the way back to the Gemara. The Gemara, David HaMelech, speaks about the concept of social networking. And I'll tell you where. It's in the Gemara in Brachos. The Gemara says that the Chachamim came to David HaMelech and said, Amcha Yisrael tzrichim parnasa. They need parnasa. Jewish people, you're our king. You should help us get a parnasa. So David HaMelech answers with a cryptic answer. He says, Se'u ufarnasu zu mizu. Go make parnasa from each other. What was that answer? Where are they expected to make parnasa from, if not from each other? And yet David HaMelech thought that's a sufficient answer. You need to make parnasa. He's not going to send them to the Plishtim. So what is he answering to Ufarnasu Zumizu? So the basic way of understanding it is also the way of understanding what social networking is. Very simple. This is Social Network 101. I have 30 friends. My sphere of influence are those 30 friends. You have 30 friends. Your sphere of influence are your 30 friends. And therefore our influence is limited to the people who we know. What social networking does is it says, what would happen if I could tap into your 30 and you could tap into my 30? Now my sphere of influence is doubled. And what happens if I could tap into each one of your 30 and soon you could change the world? So the concept that David HaMelech is saying is, you're limiting yourself to the people that you know, but you have to learn how to network socially in order to reach people. So it sounds like a good thing. And even more so, I will even tell you that there are good aspects to it. But here's what we have to understand as being from Yidden. We are not against modernity. We are not against technology. We are not the Amish. We are not the people of no. We are the people who are Yorei Shamayim. And a Yorei Shamayim, what is Yorei? Yorei means many things, but on its face value, it means we tremble. We live in awe and fear of Hashem in the most healthy way imaginable. And therefore, whenever something new comes out, we don't rush headfirst into change without understanding the ramifications of that change. Listen carefully. Obviously, the world is changing. It's changing before your eyes. I'm already a Zaidi. It's changed many times in my eyes. I did not grow up with any of this, and I see it. And my kids are different. They're in a different door, and already my kids have kids. We're not against change, but what we say is the following. Any change that exists, we need hadracha to understand how to deal with it. Let me tell you an anecdotal story. When texting became a big thing, now today text is more than phone calls, people. It's easier, it's quicker to text somebody. So I was speaking to a bacher after his yeshiva came out with the proclamation, no texting, we don't want texting, no smartphones, no texting. And this bacher said to me, the Rosh Yeshiva are simply backward. They're just backwards. This is how we reach each other. We WhatsApp, we text, it's quick, it's easy, we throw in an emoji or three, and that's what texting is. And I said, they're called chachamim for a reason. While the secular world would have us believe that our chachamim are backwards people, or they're not in touch with today, the reality is their deep insight that comes from Torah tells us certain wisdom that we may not understand. So I said, for example, there may be, this was a bacher who was not yet dating, I said, there may be a young lady that you meet, and you would never go over to your yeshiva bacher, but if you get a number, you'll text, and you'll text back and forth, and that's what will happen. He goes, no, if I wouldn't speak, I wouldn't text. I want to tell you, within a half a year of this guy starting to text, he was texting girls right, left, and center. And I met him again. I said, I want you to be maida. I want you to at least admit that the chachamim were not out of touch. They understood. Does it mean that we don't text? No, but what are the safeguards? In other words, we're going to embrace technology, but cautiously. Yeshivas have websites. Some yeshivas that don't allow internet, strangely enough, the only way to register is online. But again, it's not a stira. I'm explaining to you why. Because we're not against technology in the same way we weren't against telephones, although Lashon Hara can be said more easily on a telephone. But we need hadracha when you're dealing with something that is so potent, that is so unknown. And there are so many studies that have come out that include addiction, that include people who end up meeting people online that they don't know, getting themselves into dangerous situations, doing things that they would never do. So does that mean that forever it won't be allowed? No, I don't believe that. I believe that eventually we will understand the balance through our chacham to understand how to use technology. I'm going to tell you, it's sort of an ancillary story, but I was once in shul, and it was a very, very, very modern shul, and the rabbi was to the left, and I was a guest there. And he got up by Shalosh Shudas, this rabbi, and he says, I want to tell everyone a chiddush. What's the chiddush? He says, my chiddush is that the easiest way, I discovered the easiest way to kasher dishes before Pesach is to put them in the dishwasher. I just put it on the hottest water imaginable, and you've kashered your dishes. Now I'm sitting next to him. I'm the guest of this rabbi, but I can't control my face. You're like, no. But I didn't say anything. I'm not going to. I'm the guest over there in the shul. But this one fellow, he came over to me after the talk. He says, I looked at your face. You didn't seem to agree with the rabbi. I said, that's nothing. It's not Hagala, it's not Liban. How hot does the water get? As hot as the sink. 110, 120 degrees tops. That's not kashering. So he says, why don't you say something? I said, I'm not going to jump in front of the rabbi, but, Bob, if you'll say, I'll back you up. So to this rabbi's credit, Bob did go over to him, and he issued a retraction over a shul email. Well, I was mistaken. The water doesn't get hot enough. But he said there are certain military dishwashers, like anyone owns one of those. There are military dishwashers where it does get up to 140 plus, which again is still not hot enough. Still not hot enough. And what bothered me is not that he's trying to come up with a chiddush. Good. Chiddushim are good. We're always trying to understand how to use technology. But what bothered me was rushing headlong into change without doing the research. Without understanding that you may end up with chametz to kedushas for your entire kehillah because you came up with a chiddush. To come up with a chiddush is not a chiddush. To understand how to use social networking, I want to tell you, in my social network, Shabbat.com, we have the hadracha of all of the Gedolim. And we have their haskamas, and I video their haskamas, and I show them how it works. And we have all sorts of safeguards, and even then I don't sleep well at night. Even with all the safeguards from the Gedolim, it is still scary. Because if someone wants to misuse it, they can. But there's a greater tragedy than that. And I'll tell you what it is. Shabbat.com is not my day job. I actually have a day job. My day job is I'm the National Director for College Outreach in North America. Which means that I fly from city to city each week, training in the Rabbanim of each campus. So I'll run to UPenn, and I'll run to Las Vegas. I'll run to the University of Madison, Wisconsin, and I'll go down to UCF in Orlando. And I go from campus to campus training in the Rabbanim. And I get to know a lot of students on my way. And some of them I feel like I made a real kesher with. But you know the trap that I myself fall into? I friend them. And of course, I am on social media. That's where they are, Basher Hashem. I don't advocate it. None of my kids are. I am, with lots of oversight from my wife. Right? We share the same account. So she could use it. She sees. It's very important to have a shomer. And even so, leave sneers out. Leave all the other issues that exist out. Just the fact that you think you've made a friend, you've quote-unquote connected, may be one of the greatest tragedies of all. I see with my own children who don't rely on social media that their friends and their friendships are so much more powerful and real. And we can take shortcuts that eventually are not shortcuts, but they're not real friendships at all. So I want to juxtapose these two, and that's going to be my talk. Juxtaposing real friends versus social media friends, and how much more we should and are able to invest in real friendship, and how great the payoff is. So I want to start with an amazing story. It's a friendship story. It's a troubling story, but it's a friendship story. This happened about 200 years ago. There was a very rich fellow whose name was Dun, like the Shevet. And Dun comes into the Baal Shem Tov. And Baal Shem Tov says, Reb Dun, how are you? And Reb Dun says, I'm doing well. Baruch Hashem, the parnas is great, everything is great. And the Baal Shem says, yeah, well, that's amazing. You know, you got a few minutes, I have a story for you. And Reb Dun says, sure, the Rebbe's got a story for me. What's the story? He says, I'm going to tell you a story about two friends. One of their names were Avram, and the other one's name was Yosef. And they grew up, they went to the same cheder together when they were young, Avram and Yosef. They were inseparable. They were best friends. They literally loved each other. And they went to the same yeshiva after elementary school. And then finally they got married just about the same time. And after they got married, Avraham says, I'm going to go seek my fortune elsewhere. I'm not a small town person. I'm going to go. And Yosef says, wait, I'm going to miss you. You're my dear friend. Avraham says, I have to go. Yosef says, I have to stay. My family's business is here. But they made a deal. And the deal was that not only will they stay friends, but if at any point in their lives they need each other, they will always be there for each other. One day, Yosef, the one who stayed in town, he lost all of his money. A terrible business deal. Yosef became impoverished, he became poor. Didn't know what to do. Took out loans from this gemach and that gemach. And eventually he said, the only thing I could do, I realized, is I'm going to go to my friend Avram who lives out of town. I'm going to go to him. Maybe he'll have Rahmanas. He'll remember our childhood friendship. Maybe he can give me a hand. And he takes the last of his money and he travels many days. Finally, he reaches, horse and buggy, takes a long time. He reaches the town of his friend, comes to the door. Avram opens the door. Oh, Yosef, my friend, welcome. I missed you. And he gives a hug and a kiss. He says, come sit down. Here's some cake. Here's some coffee. Please tell me how the family is. Tell me how life is. And Yosef says, not so good. I really, I invested my money. I tried so hard. But wherever I turned, I lost money. And I am impoverished. I'm poor. So Avram says, my friend, thank God, Baruch Hashem. Hashem has shined down his countenance upon me. I've done very well for myself. I'm quite wealthy. You're my dear friend. I will never forget our friendship. Half of what I own is yours. Period. Half of everything I own. And Yosef went back to his hometown, a very, very wealthy man. Well, the wheels of fortune turned. And Yosef, who now got half of Avram's money, Yosef began to do better and better and better. And he took that half and he invested it. And now his investments really began to pay off. And Avram, who gave away half of his money, he began to lose money right and left. And soon Avram became impoverished. He was so poor. And with nowhere else to turn, he decided he's going to go back to his hometown. And hopefully Yosef will repay the favor. And he takes that long trip back to his hometown. And Yosef opens up the door and says, Avram, my friend, come on in. Please sit down. How are things? And Avram says, not so good since you left. Things have taken a turn for the worse. I don't know what to do. We can't afford bread. We can't afford anything. And Yosef looks at him with those sad eyes and says, I wish I could help you. But I can't. Because I see already the way God is working. I see Hashem is not going to let us both be on top. And therefore, if I do the kindness that you did for me, I know what's going to happen. You'll become wealthy and I'll become poor, and I can't do that to my family. So I wish I could help you, but I can't. And Avram went away poor and brokenhearted. Well, Hashem doesn't run the world the way we think he does. And the wheels of fortune again changed. And Avram, who began with menial labor jobs, once again began to put together his fortune. And Avram became wealthy back again. And Yosef, who was so smart he didn't want to help, Yosef actually lost his money. Now Yosef was caught. What am I going to do now? Do I dare go to Avram that I did not repay his favor? I was kafui tov. And after turning to every friend and every family member, he had no choice. And he travels to Avram. And as Avram knocks on the door, and Avram opens up the door, sees him standing there in tattered clothing, and said, don't say a word. Half of my fortune is yours. For the second time, he gives half of his money to Yosef. And the rest of their lives, they lived and they both prospered. They passed away on the same day. And when they came up to Shamayim, in Benzion Shalmala, they decreed that Avram, who was this big Baal Chesed, this wonderful friend, Avram is going to go straight to Gan Eden. And Yosef, who was a kafui toiv, it's the other place for him. But Avram turned to Benzion Shalmala and said, no, I'm not going to Gan Eden without my friend. So now Benzion Shalmala, they were stuck. What do we do? We can't send Avram down to Gan, but we can't let Yosef go to Gan Eden. He was an awful person. So they decided they're going to send them both back down as Gilgulim. They're going to be reborn again, and they're not going to know each other. They'll be strangers. And one day they're going to meet each other. And Yosef, the selfish one, he's going to be very wealthy. And the poor one, and Avram, the generous one, he's going to be born very poor. And one day, this poor person is going to come to the former Yosef for money, and if he gives him money, then they're both going to go to Gan Eden. Well, Avram, who is now reborn with a different name, to beggar all of his life, goes from town to town. Finally, he ends up one day in the town where his former friend Yosef was. And he's so poor, and he ends up by this former Yosef's door, knocks on the door, and the guard is standing there, and the guard says, "What do you want?" He says, "Please, I haven't eaten in almost 3 days. I am starving, I am weak. My master does not take visitors. We don't take beggars. Please leave." But the poor man, he was so desperate. He pushed his way through. And he begins banging on the front door. "Please let me in." And the former Yosef, who's now dressed in fine robes, sees this poor guy standing there banging on his door. "Who let you through? Who let you in?" And he pushes him down the stairs. The poor person falls down the stairs, head over heels, and at the bottom he lay dead. And Dun, who is sitting there in front of the Baal Shem Tov, his face turned white. You see, just that day, Dun, who is a very wealthy man, had pushed a poor person down the stairs. And the Baal Shem Tov was telling him the story. He says, "You used to be Yosef, and that was your one chance to redeem yourself, and you blew it." Friendship. Of course, the end of the story goes, the Baal Shem Tov says, "You want to redeem yourself? Find this poor man's family, his wife and his children, and support them and marry off the children, and that will be a kapara for you." Friendship sometimes hurts. Friendship is exhilarating. But the main thing about friendship is real. In social media, you can block somebody. In real life, if someone says something you don't like, you discuss it. And maybe there was miscommunication. Maybe they didn't mean it. You didn't see their face when they said it. Their tone of voice. In friendship, which is so real, we deal with difficulties daily. But then friendships become very lasting. You know, there's a very famous story from the Gemara. The Gemara speaks about a person in Choni HaMagil. I'm sure you all know this story, it's very famous. But Choni HaMagil said, how could it be that Golus was like 70 years? So as he's walking, he says, how does Golus between the Bayis Rishon and Bayis Sheni, how is that like 70 years? So he's walking and he sees someone who's planting a carob tree. And he says, "Why are you planting this? Doesn't it take 70 years to grow?" He says, "Yeah, I'm never going to see the fruits of this carob tree. But I have carob trees because my grandparents planted them for me, and I'm planting these for my children." And Chani says, "That makes a lot of sense." And he continued walking, and he walked and then he got tired, gave a big yawn, lay down next to a tree, closed his eyes, and he slept. And he slept. And he slept for 70 years. And he wakes up, and he sees that the boxer tree, the carob tree, it's all grown. He says, "I don't get it. How did it grow? I went to sleep and it came back." And to make the story short, he understood that what actually happened was he slept for 70 years. And he walks to the Beis Medrash, and he hears the Talmidei Chachamim are saying, "Chayni used to say this, and Chayni used to say that." And he came and said, "I'm Chayni. Oh, I used to say this, yeah? Who are you?" "I'm Chayni HaMagil." "You're Chayni?" "No, Chayni died or something a long time. No one knew what happened to him. He must have died 70 years ago." He said, "No, I'm Chayni." And eventually, what did Chayni say? Those famous words, "Oy chevrusa, oy misusa." Give me friends or give me death. Believe me, he was not speaking about Facebook friends. Give me Facebook friends. No. He was speaking about friendship, where people grow from each other. People learn. The kind of friendship that when you have it, when you have that friendship, it literally gives you life. I want to tell you, I was involved with a shidduch, a young man who had been married once, and it was a very difficult marriage, no children, and I was determined I'm going to find him his shidduch. And I was asked by Reb Pinchas Young, who's a speaker in Monsey, I was asked by him to speak for his post-seminary girls. I said, "I'll be happy to, but I want to make a deal with you. After I speak," I was speaking in a school. I said, let me have an office. I said, "I want to make a deal with you. After I speak, I want to meet every one of your girls for shidduchim. And Baruch Hashem, my wife and I have made over 200 shidduchim. So we're very into shidduchim, and we love making shidduchim. So I said, let me meet each of the girls, and we'll take notes. Come to me when you're ready. So every one of the girls sat in front of me, and I took notes about them. I had different ideas for shidduchim, but really I was looking for that one great girl for this great guy. And this one girl comes in, and I both spoke with her, and I spoke to a few other girls about her. And when I came back from that speech that night, I told this person, I found your wife. Definitely found your wife. And Baruch Hashem, they got married, have 3 kids now. What was the story? What struck me? They said about this girl that she was such a good friend that even after she studied all night for a test, I'm sure it's happened to some of you, after you studied for a test, you come to school, and your friend say, oh, I forgot to study. Can you quickly go through the notes with me? Can you quickly? It's very annoying when that happens. Why? Because you just spend your entire night studying, and they spend their night doing who knows what, and now they want to use your notes. Ever happened, right? And they said about her that she would not just go through all of her notes with a girl that would ask her, but as soon as that girl walked away, if another girl would come and say, oh, I forgot to study, she'd once again start, and sometimes even a third time before the test. Not saying, oh, well, you should have studied, and now you're going to fail, and you'll learn a better work ethic, because I'm your teacher. But instead, I'm your friend. And whatever you should have done is between you and your studies and your parents and Hashem. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm your friend. And I told this husband, anyone who could be such a good friend is going to make an amazing wife. Because friendship means you go that extra mile. In the social network, you don't have to go any mile. As a matter of fact, there is an app called WhatsApp that I'm sure you've heard of. And it annoys people sometimes because when someone sends you a message and you look at it, they know that you looked at it. And they know that you didn't bother answering, right? It's true, it's annoying. Because the beauty of social networking is that I can ignore you at my convenience. In real friendship, we don't ignore people. And if you can't answer now, you say, I can't speak now, but I will be able to speak at such and such a time. And I don't want to pretend that I didn't see it. Because what that really does is it waters down friendship. And maybe, of all things, that is the great avla of the social network connection. The reality is, when a person has 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 Facebook friends, they don't know who they are. If they bumped into them in the street, they wouldn't know them. Is that not so? You barely know everyone in your school, and not with 200 people here. How do you know 2,000 people or 4,000 people? And by calling it a friend, we water down that idea of friendship. Tell you a beautiful, beautiful Gemara. The Gemara says, it's Gemara in Eruvin, Hanifter mechaveroi, al yiftar el mitoch tvar halacha, shemitoch kach zechreu. What does that mean? Let's translate. Hanifter mechaveroi, someone leaves their friend, al yiftar, don't leave, el mitoch tvar halacha, except through words of halacha. Share a halacha with each other, shemitoch kach zechreu, because through that, you're going to remember your friend. Now, that's a very, very deep line. There's a lot to be said about it. But let me just point out 2 things. When it says, ha-niftar, al-yiftar, if you have to leave your friend, don't leave except through dvar halacha. What does the Gemara seem to imply? You shouldn't leave your friends. A real friend is a big deal. It's such a big deal that when you make your decisions about what school to go to, what seminary to go to, where you're going to live, all of that, friends are not like, okay, well, you make new friends. It doesn't work like that. Friends are not disposable. They're indispensable. They're important. Ha-niftar, al yiftar el mitav kvaralcha. If you have to leave. Why? So let's look at the last words. Shemitoich kach zachreu. Through that, you'll remember the friend. I don't get it. What does the Gemara give me advice how to remember friends? That's Gemara, the Gemara that tells me all sorts of Torah Shabbat and how to do Kriya Shema and how to return a lost object, is now giving me advice, friendship advice. Hey, you want a good way to remember your friend? Strange Gemara. Unless remembering friends is vital. Because it's even more than a Rabbi. A friend is a teacher. A friend could be a mentor. If I ask you who your best friends are right now, it shouldn't be the person that you pal around with, but it's the person that makes you the best you that you could be. It's not just networking. It's I am me because she is she. I am a better person. I am kinder. I am sweeter. I am more spiritual. I am a better davener. I am more makbid in Shmiras HaLashon simply because she is my friend. And therefore, not only will I remember her, but I'll make sure not to leave her. I want to say something about that. If you want to make such a friend, it's incredibly important to invest. And that's also something you don't have in social networking. To invest in friendship means that you give them your time. Or like this girl in the story who we made the shidduch, because she invested in her friends with her knowledge. She was there for her with a listening ear. If you consider somebody your good friend, or if you consider yourself you are their good friend, ask yourself, yeah, we're good friends, but we never talk. Then you're not good friends. It's not the way, oh, we're great friends, we meet each other in camp. So you're not your camp friends. A good friend stays in touch. I'm very busy. No one's too busy for a 2-minute phone call. Nobody's too busy. If a friend is a real friend, you invest in them. For that reason alone, even those who are knee-deep in social networking should get out of the water a little bit. Simply to reteach themselves, what does it take to acquire a friend? It's a lost art. Last 2 stories. Now, this story, I don't really have a great spiritual understanding about why it happened. But I'm going to share with you because I believe it's connected to friendship. I got married many years ago. And during my honeymoon, which took place in my parents' basement in Cleveland. It's cheaper than the Bahamas, right? We were in Cleveland in the basement, enjoying our right after our first week of Shabbat brachas, and it was Motzei Shabbos, and I get a phone call. It was an awful phone call. And someone said there's been an accident. 3 of my dear friends were driving down from the mountains from Staten Island Yeshiva, Bronx in New York. They were driving to the city. The driver himself was a new driver. They had stayed up the night before, the entire night, playing Risk, which is a game that never ends. And as they're driving, apparently the driver, this new driver is 18 years old, he fell asleep at the wheel. 19, fell asleep. And the car rolled over the side of the road, went down a ravine. The driver was thrown from the car. The car unfortunately rolled over him, and he was nifter. He did not have a seatbelt on. One of the other passengers, he did have a seatbelt on, although he was shaken up, nothing happened to him. And my good friend, my closest friend, his name was David Newman, he had his arm ripped off. And that itself is an amazing story. There's a lot that went on. Some hitchhiker saw this accident and quietly went and tied a tourniquet on his arm to stop the bleeding and walked away, and that saved his life. Just an amazing story that happened with David Newman. The person who passed away, his name was Jacob Isaac Goldstein. Yaakov Yitzchak Goldstein, Jacob Isaac Goldstein. I told my wife, she saw when I put the phone down, she saw my face was white, and she said, "You've got to go. I know you've got to go to the Levaya. You have to go visit David in the hospital." I said, "Yeah." And the next morning, I took the flight out. I went straight from the airport to my in-laws who had a car, and straight from there to the cemetery. And the father of Jacob Isaac Goldstein saw me there and he gave me a hug. He said, "Wow, I know you just got married." And actually, Jacob Isaac was he's in my wedding video. And he said, "It means a lot to me that you came all the way." Then, after the Levaya, I was driving down the BQE to go visit David Newman in the hospital. And as we're driving, there's that one place in the BQE that has 4 lanes turned into 2. And if you don't realize it, you go from 50 miles an hour to 15 miles an hour, and then it gets fast again. And I'm driving my in-laws' car, and as we're going from 50 to 15, I put on the brakes, and we're all going slowly. And I look in the rear view mirror, and there is a truck who clearly is spacing out because he is rumbling towards me, and it does not look like he has on the brakes. And I give one last scream, and this huge truck plows right into me, and it accordions the car. And if you would look at the car, you would say nobody could have lived through this. Somehow, not only did I live, but I did not have a scratch. I was shaken up, not a scratch. Somehow I got out of the car. I was able to squish out of the car. The truck driver jumps out, he's shaking. "I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." I said, "Okay, give me your license, give me your registration." He said, yeah. And he goes into the truck and takes it out. And when I get it, I get the shivers, I go cold. Because his name is Jacob Isaac Goldstein. Exactly the same name as the person whose Levaya I came from. And I viewed it as such a sign that I did not press any charges, nothing. And when I came back, I told it to my wife, and I said, "I don't know, what is Hashem saying? I don't get it. But maybe something was supposed to happen, but when you're there for a friend, there's a shmirah." There's no question in the world that HaKadosh Baruch Hu values friendship to the point that one of the highest levels of Shemus of Hashem is Yedid, Yad, a deep and undying love and a connection. Here's the last story. I was a Rav for 10 years before I went into Kiruv. When I went into Kiruv, our family was the first ones outside of Chabad to do campus Kiruv. Today, there's about 150 campus Mekarvim. In those days, there were none. This was the year 1999. And the same year, right outside of Chabad and Hill, there was no campus Kiruv. So I applied for a job in the University of Michigan. Called this person, the rabbi over there. I want an interview. He said, "Sure, love to do that." I had just lost a brother, so I was very traumatized. The brother was nifter, that's why I left the Rabbanus. I said, I need to do something more, and I feel that Kiruv will give me more satisfaction in terms of doing for the Klal. So I was going to fly down to Michigan when he says, "You know what? You don't have to fly down. We found someone, and he's going to be doing the Kiruv. His name is Aaron David." Okay? So my first opportunity is gone, but at the same time, an opportunity in California opened up. And so the very same year, University of Michigan and UCLA opened up Kiruv programs. And thus began a friendship together with a little bit of a rivalry between myself and this fellow Aaron David. First, we called ourselves Jam. That was our name on campus. He calls me up, he says, "You know, I really like that name, Jewish Awareness Movement, Jam." He says, "Can we call ourselves Jam?" He says, "Yeah, you can call yourselves Jam." So now, we're both Jam. Jelly and Jam, right? We're all Jam. Then, He says, you're getting a lot of people. Can you teach me how to bring people in the door? I said, I'd be happy to. So he comes down to California, and I teach him how to table, which means to stand at a table and to find people to come and come to your Shabbos and to come to your Kiruv programs. So now I'm teaching him. Then he comes to me, calls me up one day and says, I have a great idea. He says, I'm going to call this idea Maimonides. He says, what's Maimonides? What's this idea? The idea is that everyone on campus will offer them $400 or $500, and they'll learn 2 hours a night. They'll do 2 Shabbat over the semester, so it'll be 10 weeks of learning 2 hours a night, and we'll give them $500. And I say, that's a ridiculous idea. Why would you pay people to learn? I get people to come without paying. He was right. I was wrong. Maimonides today is so incredibly successul that every single week between 30 and 40,000 people around the world learn in a Maimonides kind of program that Aaron David started. Then I call him up and I say, I got this idea. Let's create a social network for everyone for Shabbos called Shabbat.com. He said, that's a terrible idea. But I persevered. So you see where we're going with this. I do one, he does one, I do. Then the most ironic thing happened. I was asked to be in charge not just of UCLA, but to take care of all the campuses. So now Aaron David works for me because he's in NYU now. He went from Michigan to NYU. So now he works for me. So how's he going to play his card here? Well, my daughter was looking for a job. So he hired my daughter and son-in-law. So he works for me, but my kids work for him. Oh my goodness, it's like a chess match. And we discuss, and we argue, and we grow. And that's what the friendship was about. But it's all ending this month. And it's ending because my son is marrying his daughter. Maybe it's not ending. Maybe it's just beginning. Who knows? The reality is, the smile on your faces tell you and tell me that there is such a thing as a real friend. There is such a thing as growing from a friendship. So my bracha to you and my petition to you is that you should find that amazing person in your life or those amazing people. And don't rely on the social network and don't dabble. It's fake, it's fake, it's fake. Okay, it's a way of texting people, that's all it is. But you want real friendship? It's face to face. Whether it's through pain or through moments of joy, through shidduchim, who knows? Hashem should give you that bracha, you should find good friends. Thank you very much.